Winter has arrived, and the power hasn't come back. This isn't a prediction. This isn't an imaginary scenario. This is what happens when below-zero temperatures meet a power grid that wasn't designed to withstand them. It happened in Texas in 2021, when millions of people were left without power for days at temperatures that shouldn't have been possible in that state. It happens every winter in parts of Europe, North America, and even in the southern regions of Brazil that aren't prepared for extreme cold waves. When the power goes out in winter, the problem isn't just darkness, it's cold. And cold kills in a way that most people don't understand until it's too late. But here's what nobody talks about. Many of the most critical solutions for surviving a winter without power don't need to be bought. They don't need to be ordered online. They don't need to be found in stores that are already closed or out of stock. They're already inside your home. This documentary is not a shopping guide. It's not a list of expensive equipment. It's an in-depth analysis of how 7 items you already own, items you use every single day without thinking twice, can transform your survival situation when temperatures drop and the power grid disappears. We're going to understand not just what to use, but why each decision matters, and how most people do exactly the wrong thing because they don't understand the basic principles behind cold and heat. Before we talk about the 7 items, we need to understand something fundamental about how cold works inside a house without power. Because without this understanding, none of the solutions will work correctly. Most people think the main problem is heating the environment. That's a mistake. The real problem is preventing the heat your body produces from being lost to the surrounding environment. A house without power isn't a neutral space. It's a thermal trap. Heat escapes through the windows, through the walls, through the ceiling, through the doors. And without active heating, the internal temperature drops quickly. The human body naturally produces heat. An adult at rest generates approximately 80 watts of heat per hour. That may seem like very little, but in a closed and well-insulated environment, it's enough to maintain an acceptable temperature. The problem arises when that heat escapes faster than the body can produce it. And that's exactly what happens in a common house during a winter without power. Windows are the biggest source of heat loss. Then come the doors, then the exterior walls. Everything conducts heat outward. And without anything blocking that loss, the internal temperature drops at a speed that surprises most people. So what does this mean in practice? It means the correct strategy isn't to heat the entire house. It's to create a smaller, more controllable environment where the heat from your own body and your family's can accumulate without escaping quickly. And to do that, you don't need anything that isn't already around you right now. The first item is something found in almost every home: blankets and comforters. It seems obvious, but the way most people use blankets during a winter blackout is completely wrong. When the power goes out, people pile blankets on top of each other and think that solves the problem. It doesn't. Blankets stacked without strategy simply cover your body. They don't prevent the heat loss from the environment around you. The correct approach is to use blankets as insulation, not just as covering. Put blankets on the windows. Put blankets on the door. Put blankets on the floor if the floor is cold. You're creating a barrier between the outside environment and the space where your family is. This drastically reduces heat loss. Think of it this way. A blanket on the window doesn't heat anything, but it blocks. And blocking heat loss is exactly as valuable as generating new heat. In fact, it's more valuable, because generating heat costs energy, fuel, physical effort, exertion. Blocking heat loss costs nothing beyond the blanket you already own. Additionally, wool blankets or synthetic blankets with dense layers work better than thin blankets, even if they seem warmer for everyday use. The principle is simple. What blocks air, blocks cold. Wool, for example, maintains its insulating properties even when wet, something cotton cannot do. That detail may seem small, but on a long winter night at low temperatures, it can make a real difference. The second item is something most people have at home, but never think of as a survival tool. Plastic and grocery bags. Plastic doesn't conduct heat. It's an efficient thermal insulator, especially when used in layers. A layer of plastic on the window blocks air currents that blankets alone cannot block. The practical approach is simple. Grab plastic bags, adhesive tape, or duct tape, and cover the windows. It doesn't need to be perfect. It needs to block the air coming in. If you have plastic wrap or larger garbage bags, even better. The goal is to create a second layer between the environment and the outside cold. But here's the detail that transforms this technique from simple to truly effective. Create an air gap between the plastic and the window glass. When there's a small space between two layers, the air in that space acts as an additional insulator. Still air doesn't conduct heat quickly, so a layer of plastic with about a centimeter of space between it and the window is far more efficient than plastic pressed directly against the glass. This technique is used in countries across Northern Europe during prolonged winters. It's not theory. It's a practice that has been proven over decades, and it can be done with materials you probably already have at home right now. The third item is one of the most underestimated: towels and kitchen cloths. Without power, doors are no longer efficient thermal barriers. Cold air enters through the gap at the bottom, through the cracks between the door and the frame. In a closed environment, that might seem like a minor issue. But over hours, that constant flow of cold air destroys the temperature of the environment you worked so hard to create. The solution is to place towels and cloths at the base of the doors, folded, heavy, pressed firmly against the floor. This blocks the entry of cold air in a simple and immediate way. But don't stop there. Doors don't lose heat only through the bottom. The sides do too. If the door doesn't fit perfectly into its frame, and most household doors don't, there's a thin gap that, over the course of a night, allows a significant amount of cold air to pass through. To address this, use cloths, folded fabric, or even folded blankets along the sides of the door, pressing them against the frame. It's not aesthetic, but in a crisis, aesthetics is the last concern.
We did it.
What matters is that the environment you created stays warm enough throughout the entire night. It doesn't need to be sophisticated. It needs to be functional. Every blocked door is one source of heat loss eliminated. The fourth item is something found in any kitchen: vegetable oils and fats. That might seem strange at first, but here's why. When the power goes out in winter, the most immediate way to generate heat inside the house is to use a controlled combustion source. A gas stove works without electricity. A portable camping stove works without electricity. And many times, what's missing isn't the stove itself, but something to burn in it efficiently. Vegetable oils and fats are fuels you probably already have at home. A gas stove with a steady flame heats a small environment significantly. It doesn't heat like a radiator, but in an environment that's already been insulated with blankets and plastic, the difference is real. But the most strategic use of oils and fats isn't burning them directly. It's using them to heat water. And here comes a concept that most people completely underestimate: the ability of hot water to store and distribute heat. Hot water doesn't cool down quickly. A pot of boiled water with a lid on can maintain its temperature for hours. That heat can be used to warm the environment. It can be used to warm clothing that you then put on. It can be used to warm your body through short baths, or by placing bottles or containers of hot water inside the blankets. Beyond that, direct fire heats water. And hot water is one of the most underestimated tools for warming the body. A hot bath, even a short one, can restore the body's internal temperature in a way that blankets alone simply cannot. The fifth item is something most people have at home, but few think of as a crisis tool: old clothes and fabric. Not the clothes you wear. The clothes you kept because you might use them someday, or that no longer fit. The fabric scraps you never threw away because you never got around to it. These items have real value in a winter without power. They are insulators. They are extra layers of covering. They are materials that can be placed in layers between your body and the environment to increase the thermal barrier. The logic is the same as wearing layers of clothing in intense outdoor cold. Each additional layer blocks more air between your body and the environment. And inside a house without power, the strategy is exactly the same. But there's a detail most people don't consider. The layer closest to the body matters more than the outer layers. If the layer touching your skin is made of a material that absorbs moisture, like cotton, it will retain sweat and cause your body to lose heat faster. The innermost layer should be dry and, preferably, made of a material that doesn't absorb as much moisture. Additionally, dense and heavy fabrics work as extra insulation on walls and windows. It's not aesthetic, but in a crisis, aesthetics isn't the priority. What counts is that each additional layer increases the barrier between you and the cold. The sixth item is something many people have but rarely consider critical: pots and metal containers. Without power, heating water becomes a necessity, not a luxury. Hot water is essential for keeping the body warm, for hydrating, for cooking food that helps generate internal energy. But not all pots are equal. Metal pots conduct heat quickly. Pots with lids that retain steam are even more efficient. A good pot with a lid that doesn't let much steam escape can heat water with less fuel and keep that water hot for longer. What seems like an ordinary household item becomes a critical tool when the way you heat and maintain hot water can determine how many times a day you're able to warm yourself. But it goes beyond just heating water. Larger pots are better than smaller ones because they heat more water at once, using less fuel overall. And if you have more than one pot, you can use one to boil the water and the other to keep it hot for longer, wrapping it with blankets around it to insulate it even further. Additionally, metal pots are good conductors of heat. This means that if you place a pot of hot water inside the environment where your family is gathered, it will gradually release heat into the space for hours. It's not a heater, but it is a passive heat source that requires no constant attention. The seventh and final item is something most people completely ignore until they need it: transparent plastic, such as grocery bags or plastic wrap, used in combination with natural light. Here's the principle: sunlight heats. And if you capture sunlight during the day, even on a winter day with limited light, you're capturing free heat without any electricity. The way to do this is to place transparent plastic on the windows that receive sunlight during the day, and then cover those same windows with blankets or fabric at night.
Good.
During the
Let's get this
day,
blanket
the
up.
transparent plastic allows sunlight to enter and heat the environment.
Plastic
At
secure.
night, the blankets
Good.
block the loss of that
Another
heat.
blanket?
This is the basic principle behind a passive greenhouse. It doesn't need to be sophisticated. It needs to be strategic. A well-oriented window can make a significant difference in the internal temperature during the hours of daylight. But there's an important detail. Not all windows receive the same amount of sunlight. Windows facing north receive less light than windows facing south, at least in the southern hemisphere. Identify which window in your home receives the most light during the
Red
day
light.
and focus your resources on it during the daylight
Make sure
hours.
it's tight.
Okay, got
At
it.
night,
Pass the tape.
cover all the windows equally.
Ready with the blanket?
This maximizes solar
Dark
heat
now.
capture during the day and minimizes heat loss during the night. Now let's talk about what connects all 7 of these items, because it's no coincidence that all of them are household items, common and inexpensive. It's because the way most people think about winter preparation has been wrong from the very beginning. People think preparation means buying things: heaters, generators, special blankets, expensive equipment, and when the power goes out, that equipment doesn't work, didn't arrive in time, or doesn't exist in sufficient quantity. What truly works is using what you already have intelligently. Insulation is more important than heating. Because if you block heat loss, you need far less energy to keep the environment warm. These 7 items aren't complete solutions on their own. They are parts of a system, and when used together with strategy, they create an environment that can sustain a family for days without electricity. There's a mistake most people make in the first hours of a winter blackout. They try to heat the entire house. A house is large. It has many windows, many walls, many sources of heat loss. Trying to heat an entire house without power is like trying to fill a bucket that has a hole in the bottom. The heat escapes faster than you generate it. The correct strategy is to concentrate. Choose a smaller space, a bedroom, for example. Put blankets on the windows and doors of that space. Use plastic to block the air. Gather the entire family in that one space. Use the gas stove to heat water. Use the extra clothes as layers. But the choice of space matters. Don't choose a room with many windows. Don't choose a room on the upper floor if the house has more than one level, because heat rises and escapes faster from above. Choose a smaller space, with fewer windows, on a lower floor if possible. This reduces the surface area that needs to be insulated and increases the efficiency of everything you do. You won't keep the house at 20 degrees, but you will keep an environment that is safe, controllable, and sufficient for your family to get through the night without any real risk of hypothermia. That's the difference between surviving a winter without power and simply getting through it. Let's talk about hypothermia because it's the real enemy of a winter without power. And most people don't understand how it works. Hypothermia doesn't only happen when it's extremely cold outside. It happens when the body loses heat faster than it can produce it. And that can occur even at temperatures that seem manageable if the environment isn't properly insulated. The human body begins to lose efficiency when its internal temperature drops below 36 degrees. When it falls below 35, symptoms start to appear: intense shivering, mental confusion, difficulty maintaining balance. Below 34 degrees, the situation becomes dangerous. And below 32, it can be fatal. This doesn't require extreme outside temperatures. It requires that the internal environment isn't properly insulated. An environment at 10 or 15 degrees, without adequate insulation, can bring a healthy person to concerning temperatures over the course of a single night. Children are the most vulnerable. Their bodies are smaller, produce less heat, and lose heat faster. So do the elderly. So do people with health conditions that affect circulation. This means the 7 items we analyzed aren't just conveniences. They are protections. Every layer of insulation you create is a barrier between your family and a very real risk. And this doesn't require anything you don't already have. It requires that you know how to use what you already possess. Nutrition during a winter without power is a topic most people neglect until the body demands it. And that's a strategic mistake. The human body needs fuel to generate heat. Without adequate nutrition, the body's ability to maintain its internal temperature decreases rapidly. This means that in a winter without power, what you eat is just as important as how well you've insulated yourself. Foods with high caloric density are the priority. Fats, carbohydrates, and proteins help the body maintain its heat production. Peanut butter, nuts, rice, beans, eggs, and meat are examples of foods that provide real energy for the body to function at low temperatures. And here the role of the pots and the gas stove comes into play again. Cooking isn't just about preparing food. It's about turning cold food into hot food, which when consumed helps the body maintain its temperature far more efficiently than food at room temperature. A hot meal may seem like a small comfort, but from the body's perspective, it's a real survival tool. There's a part of preparation that nobody likes to face: the psychological part. When the power goes out in winter and doesn't come back, the environment changes. It gets dark earlier. It gets cold faster. People stay at home without entertainment, without easy communication, without the routines that normally structure the day. This generates anxiety, and anxiety generates mistakes. People who make quick decisions out of fear make worse decisions than people who stay calm and think clearly. The 7 items we analyzed work best when they are used with calm and strategy. When you understand why you're doing each thing, not just what you're doing, you spend less physical and mental energy. And that matters. Because in a winter without power, your energy, both physical and mental, is a limited resource. The family needs a routine, even if it's a simple one. A time to eat, a time to warm up, a time to rest. Structure isn't a luxury. It's a way to keep the mind functioning correctly when everything around you has changed. And this doesn't require anything beyond simple decisions made in advance. It doesn't require equipment. It doesn't require resources. It requires mental organization. And mental organization begins with understanding that the environment has changed and that the routine needs to change with it. There's another factor that most people completely ignore: humidity. A cold and humid environment is far more dangerous than a cold and dry one. Humidity increases the speed at which the body loses heat. Moisture in the air conducts heat much faster than dry air. This means that a house with high humidity in a winter without power cools down faster and forces the body to work harder to stay warm. How do you control this without power? By using the very resources we've already discussed. Minimal controlled ventilation, not full ventilation. Covering areas that generate moisture, like the kitchen when you're boiling water. Wearing dry clothes, not damp ones.
Yep, you too.
And keeping the main living space dry, even if the rest of the house is humid. This doesn't eliminate humidity entirely, but it reduces its impact on the environment where your family is. And that reduction can make the difference between a difficult night and a dangerous one. Before we finish, let's quickly review what truly matters when winter arrives and the power doesn't come back. Insulation comes first. Always. Without insulation, any heat source you use will be wasted. The blankets on the windows, the plastic on the doors, the towels at the door bases. That's the foundation. Then comes the heat source. The gas stove, the hot water, the layers of clothing. These are the tools that maintain the heat that the insulation preserves. And behind all of this is the decision to concentrate. Not to heat the entire house. Not to scatter your resources. To choose one space and create the best possible conditions within it. Your family doesn't need comfort. It needs safety. And safety, in this context, means being warm enough for the body to continue functioning correctly. A winter without power isn't an unlikely scenario. It's a scenario that happens regularly around the world. And when it does, the people who get through it without major problems aren't necessarily the ones who prepared the most or bought the most. They're the ones who knew how to use what they already had intelligently. The 7 items we analyzed aren't anything extraordinary. They are blankets, plastic, towels, oil, old clothes, pots, and windows that capture sunlight. Nothing you can't find inside your own home at this very moment. The difference isn't in the resources. It's in the knowledge of how to use them. And that knowledge costs nothing. It doesn't require purchases. It doesn't require sophisticated equipment. It simply requires understanding how cold works and how your body responds to it. Because when the power goes out in winter, it won't be the heater that saves your family. It will be the way you use what you already have. The question isn't, what do I need to buy to be prepared? The question is, what do I already have that could save my family if winter arrives without power? Because the answer may be closer than you think. Inside your own home, all around you, right now. Preparation isn't about having more. It's about knowing more.